and said, let's turn this into a lease agreement, because that's really what it should be. And let's take a look at that and let's modernize this agreement. So we got Patrick involved, and fortunately Eric Benny, he's on their board, and so he got involved. So the two attorneys, this is what we came up with. It's extremely similar to what it was. It's modern and it's in the right format now. So, but it's a 15-year agreement that's renewable to 5-year terms upon people agreeing. And like I said, the society played a major part in putting this together, so there wouldn't be opposition either way.
Okay,
Okay, great, thank you.
thanks.
Any questions?
I didn't see any reading through it, so.
Okay, all right. On to the next, we have a public hearing, consideration of plans and specifications for 2018 parking lot improvements.
Hi, Jesse
Hello.
Howe, city engineer. Eric has some slides. Maybe. So the first one we're going to talk about is parking lots. Maybe we have slides. The first lot we'll talk about is at 6th and Washington. I'll just wait. Okay. Here's the project locations. The two lots we're talking about today are 6th and Washington up to the top left, and then Main and Valley, bottom right. Project scopes for both of these, Main and Valley is pictured at the bottom, and basically it will be expanded to the south where those buildings were recently demolished here. It'll add about 22 spaces to that lot, and I think primarily it'll be for PD parking. And it extends some storm drainage to the south of the lot just to handle that portion that we're extending it. The Washington and 6th lot is basically a resurfacing project. As we got into it, we noticed we did have a storm intake that was tied into our sanitary system. So you'll see here it's a fair amount over budget. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it'll replace the existing light there with an LED light and kind of regrade the lot so it's not as rough getting in and out of there. I don't know if you guys have parked in there, but it's a pretty significant bump as you come in. But and that's it for those two. On to the budgets. Main and Valley, we are a little bit over, but generally the estimate numbers I use are a touch high, so we might be all right on Main and Valley. Again, that's the one, that will be for primarily PD parking. The 6th and Washington, it's a whole nother story. Like I said, I think we found about $40,000 to $50,000 worth of storm-related repair. So we're hoping it comes in less, but as you can see, it's quite a bit over. To help with the process, we initially had planned on doing complete concrete replacement, but we are giving them an asphalt alternative. So hopefully we can get something closer to the budgeted cost. And Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add on the budgets or how we would cover a shortfall.
One of the things that does drive the cost up is on the stormwater side. We can at least have a discussion about whether we use stormwater or sewer funds to pay that portion of the cost.
Yeah, well, that would,
And it's something that or the only other real spot that I can say that we have some flexibility is still we do receive a significant sum of money at this budget year. It's just you can only use that in so many different directions.
What did you say you thought the tentative cost was on the sewer portion of it? Did you say that, Jesse?
around 40.
40.
Which may get it to where
50,
we have an
something like
alternative
that.
that gets us within our overall cost once we get to the end of this.
How's that fund looking right now?
This is funded, the sewer fund?
Yeah.
I mean, the sewer fund
It took a
has,
hit with the project we had over by Two Valley, didn't it, with those costs?
we use a miscellaneous sewer rehab account for that, and we basically move money from the regular sewer account over to that fund to cover those costs. And I mean, this is the kind of thing that you could say is exactly what that fund is supposed to be used for. It's just, yeah, how much do you have in any given year? We try to do about 300,000. Did we do 300 or 500,000 for next year, Stephanie? Do you remember? So, I mean, after July 1, you could tentatively look at, I mean, this is a project that's going to go from one year to the next, I would assume.
Yep.
And we can look at that coming out of the next year's portion of that.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to handle this, Jim, but the mayor is watching us, and he just sent me a text. Hi, Mayor, wave at him. He was at, is it all right to ask a question that he sends in? I'm not sure how
What's the
that,
question?
he was gonna ask you about,
Then I'll tell you if it's all right or not.
I'm gonna have problems with this word, permeable pavement. Are there grants available for that, and is that something we can use?
At
There you
this
go,
point,
Shane.
it would be hard to work into it.
Okay.
Permeable would cost a little bit more, but, you know, if we delayed it, maybe it would be something we could look at.
I think that we may
Long-term.
have even looked at a permeable paving project on this at, is,
40 isn't 40?
yes.
40%.
So, and the grants that we would have been able to go after to get wouldn't have really covered the cost of the increase. They'd have
Okay.
helped to pay for the cost, but they
But not
wouldn't have covered the cost.
Okay.
Nick wants to say something.
Jesse, did you say how many additional slots the 6th in Washington?
Sixth in Washington is just resurfacing, so it really doesn't
And-
add any.
okay.
And the
It's
other
not
major,
adding any additional,
the
okay.
major thing that, other major thing it does is this entryway into it.
Yeah, it's really rough right
Yeah.
now. There's a
Okay.
bump there to where we're taking that out.
And that's
As
one
much
of the
as we can.
significant things that's, I mean, for a cost driver, that's one of the significant cost drivers on that. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why we ruled out permeable pavement early on was because of, one, the cost, but two, in case we wanted to go up with an upper deck. Putting an upper deck on top of permeable pavement
Is not gonna be
rules out the
possible.
purpose of the permeable
Yeah.
pavement below. And at least with concrete, you can make the appropriate saw cuts and go down and establish your foundations for whatever piling you would need.
I have a question for you. Can you explain to me on the south side of the lot, on Main and Valley,
Okay.
what that's going to look like? Is there going to be entrance and exit on the south side of that lot? Is there going to be a barrier between the parking lot and the railroad tracks? Is the drive that continues, because if you pull up to that railroad crossing, you can take a right and drive through there currently. Is that going to be blocked off? What's that going to look like?
Right. On the south side there, if you look at other parts of the lot, there's kind of a raised median between that lot and the alley, and that's the same thing we're doing all around. So there's no access out of the south, and the main reason for that is, you know, we could put it in, but we're trying to cut costs as much as we could here. There's still building foundation in that area, and we would have to take some of that out. And then the adjacent street just to the south, I took a picture of it with my boot, and the concrete's displaced, you know, 3 to 6 inches in spots, so it's really rough, and tying into that line was
Would
gonna
be-
be difficult without extending,
Okay.
you know, another couple hundred square foot of pavement. So it would have been
And what kind of barrier is going to be there? Is it just going to be the median, or is
Just
there going to be a
median.
wall there?
just raised median. So like a 6-inch curb with a back to it and raised into the alley too.
Isn't there a wall that extends on the
Yeah,
east side of that?
On the east side of Budding Main Street,
Yeah.
there is a brick wall on that side, and I think it was actually potentially part of the building, but I'm not for sure on that. But yeah, there is a brick wall there now. Further towards the south side, it goes away and turns into the same type of median curb type style that we were planning on going around with.
So the wall won't continue to the south?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. Anything?
One last question. So these parking lots are part of our parking plan as far as the way they're going to be marked and signage and all that?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
What would it cost to put a barrier on the south side? Would it be considerably more?
Like a wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at fairly considerably more.
Footings and then going as high as,
Well, we could use the existing footings that were there for the building and put it on, but how you'd go about doing it, whether you did something decorative or concrete, it
So-
could get pricey.
so one of the things that was brought to me was the potential for using that space there as a medium for art or artistic ability. It was something that's been done in other communities where they'll use, and I saw one in another Iowa community where they used a 6-foot concrete wall to partition between a railroad track and a parking lot, but they opened that wall up to the public for them to come and paint on.
Right.
And they were murals, and some people would paint on them every few days, and some people would paint on them every few months, and y'all had this constantly evolving wall that provided an outlet for people to paint on, basically, and draw them away from that. So I always, somebody that is associated with the art clinic down here brought that to my attention, said that would be a good spot, and I agreed with them. So I just wanted to ask the question, what kind of increased cost would that be? Is there grants out there that we could use in order to encourage that? Is that something that would even be possible?
Well, and it really is still something we could add on because
Okay.
we're tying right into those foundations. So just making sure we would place the wall above those foundations would
Yep.
be what we'd have to worry about there. But, maybe we could work up some costs for you on potential. I'm, not going to shoot something off here.
Sure, yeah,
without
no,
looking
that's
into
fine.
it a little bit. And
I
kinda
figured
get
I'd
some
ask since we're on the
details.
topic, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but it's something I can put together for you guys.
All right, thanks.
You're talking about the south side. This is what the design of that Main and Valley looks like.
Yeah, so it would just be on that,
I would caution, there is
That's
some,
helpful.
the Market Street section of road is in pretty poor shape. I actually we tried to look at trying to get that fixed at the same time, but we didn't have the availability to get that fixed. There is also the potential that future storm and sanitary work will be going on in that area, on the Market Street side.
and we don't
There's
want
an intake in the middle of the alleyway, correct?
Right. It's,
So that would have to be
Basically.
disconnected from the storm, according to our current consent order.
so we don't want to do work and then tear it out in 10
That's
years to
correct.
redo it, so that doesn't make sense.
and that's the main reason we stayed out of the alley.
I like the way you're thinking, though, about the mural project. My concern is if we're already over budget, and maybe looking at
Yeah, that's
adding
why
more
I wanted
probably
to see if it was
probably isn't
going to be a
feasible,
future
but,
possibility.
but I have
what
seen
that
them in
would
other
look like.
cities, and they are nice.
All right, anything else? Okay, next we have consideration of plans and specifications for the 2018 Mount Pleasant Street HMA overlay.
All right. I think we have slides for this one, too. All right, so project location, basically, we will be milling and then laying new asphalt in the area you can see there. It might not be too easy to see, but basically, we're going from Gear Avenue in West Burlington all the way to Highway 61. So that's basically where we'll be. Next slide kind of shows what we'll be doing. And again, the pavement areas from Gear Avenue to Highway 61. One of the more significant aspects of this is we're doing a lane reconfiguration. That's how we proposed it in the grant that we got for this. It's 80% funded by federal funds, so I'll get into that a little bit more later. So that lane reconfiguration does support our complete streets policy, and there will be bike lanes. So it'll be a little bit of a change in that area, but again, that's what we had in the grant. The sidewalk and pedestrian ramps will be provided at all applicable intersections throughout the project. And then we are extending some sidewalk on the south side of the road from Cottage Grove Avenue to Highway 61 to, again, promote that complete streets outlook on things. There are a significant amount of intake tops that are going to need to be modified as part of this project, so you don't have bike tires going in those non-bike safe grates. And we just have some generally intakes in poor disrepair in that area anyway, so those are all getting replaced and lifted so that they aren't an issue for the bikes. The next slide kind of shows a little bit more about that lane reconfiguration. The folks in the Federal Highway Administration and state like to call these road diets, but we kind of figured that was a little confusing for everybody, so we're kind of trying to use the lane reconfiguration just so, there's no confusion with it. But you can see The before and after, we're basically exactly those dimensions out on Mount Pleasant Street. Right now, it's 4 11-foot wide lanes. It'll be converted to 2 5-foot bike lanes, 2 11-foot lanes, and then a center turn lane for both directions. Again, we did get STBG money for basically doing this, citing safety reasons and some other things. So we're kind of married to this at this point in the game. And
So
just,
I'm sorry,
ahead.
STB money stands for what? Sorry,
you had surface transportation block grant.
thank you.
Yep. The, in 2010, just some statistics, so Nick gave you a bunch of packets that give all this information plus a little bit more, in case you guys get any questions on it, so you can be informed with people. But there's been a lot of studies on these, and, you know, some people might say that, you know, it's too busy of a street to go down to 2 lanes. Well, there's different parts of the country that do these all the way up to, I want to say like 25,000 cars per day, and we're looking at about 6,000 average on Mount Pleasant Street. So they say that we're a perfect candidate for doing it, and it should increase the safety pretty measurably. Again, in that 2010 study that was done by the Federal Highway Administration, the average project in Iowa was a little over a mile, and I think we're 1.4 here. The average ADT was around 8,000. Again, we're closer to 6. And what they were looking at in safety improvements was crashes per mile went from just about 24 down to just about 12. So it halved the incident rate from a safety perspective. The other thing that I'm sure we'll hear a lot about is, you know, it's going to slow down traffic, this, that, and the other. Again, there's some pretty good literature in those handouts we gave you. The general trip times were very minimally affected. In a mile, they were talking under 30 seconds type of stuff. And the one thing it did do was curb the excessive speeders, which they found that the instances of speeding over 5 miles an hour were usually cut by almost 70%. So it's a good thing from a safety perspective.
disappointed.
It's just change. So,
Can't go faster, John.
any questions about the concept before we go into the budget or? any of
I
that?
like it.
No, I think it really encourages people to, you know, get out and, 1, be healthier, and 2, be able to travel to places safely. You know, I rode my bike for a while throughout town, and it can be very scary if there's no bike lane.
Well, quite honestly, some of those sections of Mount Pleasant are crowded with 4 cars. I mean, I'm in favor of doing this. It would make a lot of sense.
Okay. So the next slide does show our pedestrian bicycle plan, and we've talked about this on a couple occasions before. I just wanted to put the slide up. This is the proposed network when they did the study back in 2013. So it's, again, kind of a hard one to see, sorry about that, but you can see the Mount Pleasant, they were proposing bike lanes or shared shoulders all the way out to Gear Avenue. So at some point, when we look at the rest of Mount Pleasant, we'll probably be looking to do this same type of approach. Project summary on this one is a little bit more rosy than the parking lot. The grant amount was $1.7 million. Our estimated costs for this are $1.275. The federally funded portion is just over $1 million, and then we did have a split with us and West Burlington on this. They have slightly more of the project area in their corporate limits, so their portion of the match on this is a little bit more than ours. We are kind of getting this in front of you guys a little bit early, but we're hoping to get it out of the way since the plans are done. We don't have the DOT letting until June 19th, which is a little bit later than we were hoping to be, but, you know, we got to go through the DOT on this, and it's let in Ames, so we had to jump through a few hoops to get it out there. We will be awarding the contract on July 3rd, starting in July, and hopefully buttoning everything up by the end of the year.
Can you go back to where does it start?
Yeah, it's,
Okay,
so just on the other side of South Gear Avenue, we'll be configuring some lanes, making the southernmost lane a right turn only, and then merging everybody back into 2 lanes of traffic heading westbound. And then we'll have to do some merge in and out, over by 61 as well.
very good. Any other,
No questions? Here.
All right, thanks.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the second reading of an ordinance rezoning the property locally known as 333 Curran Street from R2 Single Family Residential to C1 Limited Commercial Zoning District.
No,
Anything to add?
no changes from the previous reading. Again, just rezoning based on the applicant or owner's request. Is planning to demolish the structure and market it as a commercial site.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Number 6, we have the preliminary adoption of a second reading of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Burlington, Iowa by amending provisions pertaining to the standard penalty application to certain sections of the code and violations thereof. No changes. Any other concerns or questions from you guys?
On either of those ordinances, were you interested in waiving the second and going to the third reading?
Possibly on number 5, if that's
Is there any reason why we wouldn't do both of them?
That's up to you.
right.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't, unless somebody in the crowd objects or somebody, I
Right.
guess that would that depend? We did have an objection to one of them last week, so.
Yes, that was number 6.
So it would probably.
I have no issue with it, but I don't know.
I would have no issue with waiving.
Waiving both of them?
Yep.
I don't either.
You're good with,
Will we irritate somebody because they might want to talk about it next week? Or no?
well, we'll still have a chance to talk about it, but
Yeah.
it'll be
Okay,
a
no,
final.
okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and do both of those. Waive both of those. All right, number 7, we have a resolution establishing a no parking zone on the east side of the 800 block of South Star Street.
Good evening. I have a resolution in front of you guys establishing a no parking zone. There was a request to extend a no parking zone on South Star. If you would zoom out a little bit maybe to try and give a perspective of what it really is. Course School is hidden behind that blue and green squares in there. Currently, there is a no parking zone during school hours from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the red stretch between Williams and just immediately to the west of where Course School is. And then, so the extended area that staff is recommending would go from just further south to West Avenue. It's currently a 27-foot wide street.
So that green section, thank you.
Correct.
Eric.
That's the requested area. It's probably a little hard to see darkness-wise. That is the extension that staff is recommending. It's 27-foot wide road with 2 cars parked on either side. It restricts access pretty greatly. So
Yeah,
we sent out
stars.
letters over a week ago. So
Do we have any objection to any of that?
we haven't received any back, but we did let them know that the council meeting will be next week. This is on the regular agenda, so if they're opposed to it, to come and do that then. So,
Okay.
any questions?
Sounds good. Now, I know that's a pretty narrow street in general, so
And it's pretty heavy traffic during
absolutely.
isolated
Yeah.
timeframes.
Yeah. Definitely. Any other questions, concerns? All good? Okay. Next, we have a resolution approving installation of two-way stop signs at the intersection of Dodge Street and South 14th Street.
This is an updated exhibit from the packet. For some reason, I did not decide to go to the right intersection. It was South 14th, but it was Hedge. It still ended in DGE, but it had a couple letters in the middle that were wrong. So after taking a look at it, for stop sign installation, we go through a warranting process, which is average daily traffic load, traffic accidents within a 10-year time frame beforehand, and then sight distance. This only triggered one of the warrants, and that was sight distance. Sight distance is greatly reduced because of trees that are immediately adjacent to the intersection. There were 2 accidents within the last 10 years. That isn't enough to trip the warrant process, but because of the greatly reduced sight distance, it's my recommendation to install 2 stop signs to stop north and southbound traffic on South 14th.
So the trees that are there, then Nick, they don't impede where the stop signs are gonna be, they just impede the line of sight.
Correct.
Long range.
Yep,
Okay.
We can't give those trees a haircut?
they're past the haircut stage. Well,
That's what the mayor just
there are things that you probably could do to cut the haircut's not a technical term, is it?
I know.
There's also a porch that kind of
Okay.
distorts visibility as well.
All right. Sounds good, thank you. Number 9, we have a resolution of the City of Burlington, Iowa, approving the application of Frank Millard and Company for the purpose of receiving benefits under the State of Iowa's Targeted Jobs Withholding Tax Credit Program and initiating agreements relative to the program.
That is quite a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Hess. Good evening, council. I'm with the Greater Burlington Partnership, just here to seek this resolution of support for Frank Millard Companies. They're seeking to expand their existing manufacturing facility at 107 Valley. So their building that they have almost filled up the entire block, they would put a small expansion, about 6,000 square feet on that building. So the project itself is $2.2 million. The application that they have filled out proposes a projected 50 new jobs, so 50 positions, all of those to exceed $30 an hour. So these are skilled, really great paying jobs. It's an exciting project, just the makeup of what they're doing. So it's not a huge building expansion, it's more of an in-house 12 to 1,400 square foot virtual laboratory. They have signed an exclusive agreement with a gentleman, the inventor of what's called a cavitation unit, which is way more science than I took in school. And so essentially it's in nature, that process happens at the bottom of a huge waterfall where the turbulence and those kinds of things enable the water to clean itself. But that all happens in a very small confined space in a unit that would sit right in front of you, right here. The different applications for it are really kind of mind-blowing. It's very exciting stuff. Essentially, they're able to take whatever dirty input from one end that comes from, whether it's an industrial, a food-grade processor or something like that, to nasty lake water, just about anything that has contaminants in the water goes through this this cavitation unit, and it comes out clean on the other end. And so it's just it's an amazing thing. The applications for it are almost endless. Could change the way we do things in our business, just where we would be able to put manufacturing facilities and so forth, that we don't have to drag $12, $15, $30 million worth of infrastructure to clean the water. So it's really a neat project. And at this point, the targeted jobs withholding tax credits, it's with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And so there's no financial match necessarily needed from the city. So we're not coming, they're not coming and asking for any funds. Just part of that application has a letter of support from the council and the mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions as long as they don't delve into the science too much.
I have one. Where, you said there's going to be a small addition to the existing building. Where's that going to go?
That will go on the southeast corner of, there's currently a little bit of space for parking.
Southeast corner?
Nope,
Southwest corner.
southwest corner. Yep, my
Okay.
bad.
Okay.
So where
I
the
was like-
receiving dock is right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then where's the clean water going to go? I'm assuming dirty water is going to be trucked in.
Yeah, so the virtual lab is so that they can test these products for other people. The folks would, currently they're having to move all that stuff to Canada and go through customs and all that stuff. So they bring that in here, it's in basically 5-gallon buckets. They come in with their dirty water, they run it in the lab. People can either attend physically or through the virtual lab. They run it through the process, and then they go through and do their analysis and testing, and then they take their water back with them when they leave. In this scenario here, this lab that they're building. So some of this is in a lab. The other part that they're doing inside the facility is they're going to actually manufacture these units here in their facility.
And then those will be installed in off-site facilities to
Yes,
clean the water?
correct.
Okay, all right.
Could we use one of those in place of our sewer plant?
Right? That's it.
They could tell you some of the things that they, like what we're doing out at Geode State Park where they're draining the lake. They've got a lake in Florida where they have basically taken a lake that's about 4 times the size of Geode and sucked that thing through that machine, churned up the water, and spit out clean water in it in about 6 months. So, yeah, the applications are pretty mind-blowing as far as the ability to reuse the water,
But
so.
the state of Iowa. would
Talk
like
to the boys
heard
at
that
Frank
about-
Miller, Jim, they'll probably
I'll
hook
have
you
to
up.
see about that. There is an impact on us. It's one that we do on a lot of other projects as well. That's, I assume, involves the quarterly payroll. So our staff
Yes.
has to work with their HR people and
To verify.
to verify all information and make sure the submittals go to the state correctly, and the payments for that flow through us from the state back to them. So it will be on our books, but it's not a cost item to the city. It is time-wise for our accounting staff,
But we're already doing that for
but
a
we're doing
couple
that
of
for
other
several other
entities
projects.
right
And
now.
it's-
so-
this is a great project.
Okay. Yep.
Go Millards, go, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
Great. All right.
Very good,
What
thank you.
else?
Is that on the consent agenda?
No,
Okay.
it's on the regular agenda. All right. Next, we have a resolution approving agreement between the City of Burlington, Iowa, and the Burlington, West Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce for hotel motel tax distribution. We have
Hello, Chelsea LaRue, Executive Director, Greater Burlington Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm going to start off with a little bit of 2017 history, kind of some of what our projections are for the next few years, and then Jason will take over from there and talk about our new contract proposal. There we go. So as I'm sure you are aware, we did a massive remodel at the Port of Burlington Welcome Center in 2017. We took an old 1980s feel and vibe. The building really hadn't gone through much remodel at all the entire time that it had been open and operating as a welcome center, into a brand new, fresh, modern feel. We did the concrete floors through the partnership with the city, and we now have new display cases with better lighting. That display case right there in the front, we're treating that as a display case of the month, so local businesses are able to purchase the spot for a minimal fee and kind of promote themselves however they want. We have an average of 1,000 visitors that come through the Welcome Center every month, so it's really great foot traffic for them. I should say visitors and residents, since we are a main ticket box office for the Civic Music events, so lots of residents do come in there as well. I absolutely love the new Welcome Center. I think it's just clean and modern. We can update the displays on a more regular basis, and just kind of change them out however we want. My favorite feature is the seating piece there, just because it kind of brings a little bit of Snake Alley into the Welcome Center as well. 2017, the CVB had their hands on just over 46,000 visitors attracted to the area. These could be visitors that came because of events that we supported through grant dollars. Maybe we helped write the bid proposal to get the event or the conference here to the area. We might have provided welcome bags to them, community information materials, those sorts of things. The American Queen passengers are included in those numbers, and of course, Fireball Run and our Ripley celebrations as well included in those. We know these visitors stay for just shy of 2 days, so we're kind of that quick weekend destination for people. But they did contribute over 4,600 hotel room nights to the area, which brings an estimated economic impact of $8.6 million. We mailed our community guides out all over the world to, I think it was 25 different countries last year based on the different ad placements that we place through print and digital. We had just shy of 13,000 visitors at the Welcome Center and just shy of 24,000 digital page views of our community guide. Our biggest community or biggest cities that are viewing the guide are Burlington, so people while they're here looking for things to do. And then surprisingly, Iowa City, not surprisingly I guess, but then Dallas, Texas is really high up there along with Cedar Rapids and Galesburg. So getting a kind of that 50 to 80 mile radius that we do target on many of our advertising. 2016 economic impact of travel numbers, just a reminder, the Iowa Economic Development Authority, so the Iowa Tourism Office, runs these numbers every year with U.S. Travel Association, and they're about a year behind. So 2016 numbers came in great at $136.4 million in visitor expenditures, and visitors helped drive over $9 million in state and local taxes. Des Moines County does continue to be ranked 13th of the 99 counties in Iowa. But then when you look at fiscal year 17 hotel motel tax collections, you will see that those numbers are starting to come back down and soften after our recent major construction projects in the area that kind of unnaturally inflated all of those expenditures and hotel stays, occupancy, all of that in the area. So we are starting to see that soften come down. Fiscal year 17 was an 11.5% decrease over fiscal year 16. But we are still at about a 25% increase over fiscal year 13. So pre-major construction projects, we are still seeing an increase there. As I kind of alluded to, occupancy in 2017 did drop down to 55.9% for the year, year over date. And after many conversations with partners in the area, we're noticing that a lot of the Recplex numbers are down as well, and we're kind of attributing that to the construction projects because hotel rooms were so hard to find during that time. The teams just kind of replaced us on their schedules. They are creatures of habit. So when they couldn't find a room for 1 year, they found a new tournament and haven't come back yet. So we have been working with our local partners. How can we brainstorm to bring new events to the area or help bolster the new tournaments, reach back out to these teams that used to come here? One of the things that we have done is create an invitational only tournament for a softball event. We've working with a local event organizer that's researched top-notch Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri teams to get some of that top quality play back here, to get some competition back for the teams. They are getting to play a free tournament at the Recplex in return for a requirement of them staying at least one night in one of our area hotels. So far, we have 15 teams that are registered in a month that registration's been open. St. Louis, Galesburg, Kansas City area, St. Charles area, Chicago, Bloomington, Normal. So they definitely are coming from a distance to experience our area. We want to not only just give them a tournament, but an experience while they're here in the community so that they think of us again moving forward. So that kind of alludes to our 2018 strategy moving forward. We're kind of taking the focus of youth and amateur sports are kind of our niche in this area. So let's focus and bolster our niche, and the other types of visitors will come because of that as well. So not only are we increasing our sports marketing, we are working on a sports market study, trying to determine what is that saturation rate out there, what things are other communities doing that we can start doing here as well to create those visitor experiences. We heard a lot from local teams that booking hotel rooms for large blocks isn't always the easiest. So we have just recently signed contracts for a new consolidated housing bureau software. So now when teams are booking their rooms, they can see all of the hotels that are participating in that block and book from one hotel site, and one person can do it for the entire team. So we're getting excited to get that up and running here soon. And just continuing to learn from our area event organizers and seeing where the CVB can help bolster some of their efforts, and we can just work better as a team together. And we are really excited to announce tomorrow at our press conference that we have signed a 3-year contract to host a Gus Macker here in Burlington. So we will be we'll be the only Iowa tournament in 2018, and we're going to host it right on the Mississippi Riverfront in the parking lot between the auditorium and the port. And Gus Macker, the owner himself, will be here tomorrow kind of doing a site visit and looking through everything. We'll be doing our press conference and announcing everything. They are super excited to be playing on the riverfront. And I will share with you, Peoria has hosted a tournament historically, but this will be their second year they have not. So we're pretty confident that we can attract a lot of those teams that used to play in Peoria. And Quincy has also had very successful tournaments for the last 20 years that we can attract many of those teams as well. So I guess any questions on that information before I hand it over?
I do. The block site, hotel booking stuff, is that just designed for teams coming into the area, or can that technology also be used, say, for concerts or any of the other stuff?
It can be used for any event that has hotel room blocks. And so
Okay.
how it works is basically we're building websites for every single event that's coming to the area, and those participants get a unique URL, and that's where they're booking from there. We're starting with a select few events at the Recplex just to try it out and get our hands in it, and then we'll go larger as we're more comfortable with it. All right, with that, I'll hand it to Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Jason Hutchison with the Greater Burlington Partnership. So included in your packet today is a tentative contract or agreement with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I think you're aware that the Chamber of Commerce operates the Convention and Visitors Bureau via a contract. We have a contract for service with you, and we also have a contract for service with West Burlington. And so in that case, we act as a vendor to the city, so to speak, that we do tourism services for a fee, which via contract is set according to a percentage amount. And so the CVB itself is not an incorporated entity. The contract is really with the Chamber of Commerce, and then we operate a CVB according to the terms of the agreement. So we've tended to do 3-year agreements, and so what we're bringing forward to you is another 3-year agreement. And, you know, there's always a struggle with when it's time to put an agreement together, how should we handle the financial arrangement? And 3 years ago, we generally agreed, I'm not sure we were in love with it, but we were generally agreeable to a reduction in the percentage, simply acknowledging some of the budgetary challenges that you all face. And so when it came time for this renewal, we thought long and hard about, you know, especially in looking at the numbers, you know, how should we approach this with you? Should we attempt to build those percentages back up, or should we keep them where they are? And we're looking at ways of kind of re-strategizing in the CVB to make sure that we're capturing our share of the youth sports market. But at the end of the day, we decided to come forward with you with an agreement that essentially matches what it was 3 years ago from a percentage basis. And so obviously as hotel motel tax improves, then the revenue that we participate in grows. But if it shrinks, then the revenue that we receive shrinks as well. And so so changes to the agreement from last time it came before this body is there's a base amount, so it's 30% of the first $700,000. Although in year one that would be $675,000 in an attempt to reimburse the city for some expenses that it had last year, and then 40% of the revenue above $700,000. The other change that we made is in section 3 under steering committee. We just clarified that West Burlington has a seat on the steering committee as well. That was not in the former, it wasn't specific in the former agreement, and I want to thank our city manager for pointing that out. And then under the term, what happens if in the future we cannot reach an agreement? What happens if we don't come to terms? Because we operate because you have faith in that, and should that ever change at some point in time, there may not be an agreement between the two entities. And so what should happen to money that exists as part of the CVB? So over time, we have diversified the revenue sources that the CVB receives. We are the custodian of destination fee dollars that the hotels are participating in. We were a Ticketmaster outlet down at the Welcome Center while VenueWorks was operating the auditorium. There are some fees that are charged when tour groups come in and we provide tour guides. And so there is revenue from the city is not our only revenue source, but it is the largest single source. And so what happens if we no longer have a contract with the city? Under term in number 8, what we would suggest is that if we could not come to a terms that the cash that still exists in the bank upon the expiration of the term would go to an endowed fund with the Community Foundation of Des Moines County, so that principal gets set aside and protected for quality of life initiatives, in a sense, into perpetuity for the community. And so that's a new element, and that's what my recommendation would be. Hopefully, we never have to use that clause, but in case we do. So that's the presentation of the contract. And the mayor is watching, and so I am supposed to remind everyone how awesome our mayor is and how good looking he is. So.
It's funny, he just said the same thing about you. Actually, what the mayor said verbatim is that, as for the record, you can state it, I'm very satisfied with the agreement and to continue work as written in the work packet. I do want to say that they've been very good and they have done a phenomenal job of working with us. So that's the mayor. And it's a little bit jumbled because I think he must be taking some back pain pills.
And if you disagreed with it, just blame it on his pain meds, so.
But I would echo those statements. I'm very satisfied with the benefit that we get out of our arrangement with CVB and the chamber.
Has there ever been a city where it went south and they had to disband?
Sure,
Really?
sure. Yep, that does happen, and it's happened in communities in Iowa, and generally. When that occurs is, cities are in a difficult budget predicament, and they see that as an easy way to make a budget meet for that isolated year. But in almost all cases when that happens, even though there's good intention, maybe for the city to take tourism services in-house or marketing in-house, that is, as we've observed, at least in Iowa, that doesn't tend to go very well, and so we think that the arrangement has worked.
Oh, yeah.
Well here.
Can you think of a city, can you name a city where they tried this and it?
Yeah, I believe that this occurred in Fort Madison a number of years ago, and also in Muscatine. So those are two
Okay.
close cities
Okay.
where that has occurred historically. I don't know what they're doing today, but I know that's happened in the past. And Mount Pleasant did some of that as well, not to the same degree as the other two.
I would echo the same thing. I think the services that your entity provides are invaluable, and more than happy to continue this. In fact, I'd like to see the relationship between the city and the partnership become more stronger, strengthened from where it is today. So I think there's some ground to be made up, but I'm happy with it.
Don't be nervous. I just was wondering if someone had done, because I don't envision it working very well. That's why I was picking your brain, but not that I was contemplating doing it, Jason.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, great.
Okay,
Anything
thank
else?
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything on it, Jim? No?
No? All right, sounds good. Next, we have the proposed consent agenda. Number 1 is a resolution approving renewal of taxi cab vehicle for hire license for Dennis Charles Maines, doing business as Yellow Cab Transportation. All good? All right, anything from you guys?
No
Good?
questions.
All right, number 2, we have a resolution to establish a new fee schedule for special events.
This was a change based on our current special event fees. I guess has been somewhat confusing for some of the applicants as well as staff. There's quite a few different categories and add-ons for application fee, park reservation fee, large event fee, rental fee, delivery fee, and this is an attempt to incorporate a lot of that into the base fee, especially with barricades and whether it's a park or a event not in the city park, just clarifying that. So when you factor in all the different add-ons, the fees will not go up significantly. It'll be pretty similar. For example, a special event fee was $25 and then park reservation was $75. Rental and delivery of cones was another $50 and tables was $50. So that $200 fee could have been eaten up pretty quickly through all those add-ons. So this kind of makes it easier for someone applying that they know what they're getting. But it does increase it for taking up both Crapo and Dankwart, and then the second day fee. For parks, it's a little different, where for runs, you're oftentimes blocking access into the parks. So it's a little more limiting. We're not able to rent out shelters during that time. So those are, I guess, reserved separately. So that's why there's a higher fee in parks, is because we're not seeing those potential for shelter reservations as well as access. Most special events not in city parks are generally open to the public. Sidewalks are still open. You can still get through the areas. So looking at a separate fee for those two. And then picnic tables, the fees did not change, and park site rentals, they didn't change, just trying to make it a little more clear what those entail.
Very good. Any questions? Good. All right. Number 3, we have a resolution amending swimming lesson fees for Dankwart Park Pool.
So the group that, I guess, one thing with our contract for the pool bubble, part of that agreement said that that group can operate swimming lessons. So they had to bring forward lessons as approved by the city council. They shall be reasonably comparable to other local lesson fees. So that's within the contract, that language. This was their initial submittal, but they did have some more discussion and want to, I guess, pull this from the agenda at this time and bring it back at the following meeting. They had some concerns that this might be too high of a fee or the schedule, so they want to kind of revisit that and bring back an amended fee at the next meeting. So they asked that this not be brought forward to the council meeting, and they'll be bringing back kind of an amended fee schedule, looking at some lower rates with some higher student to instructor ratios and having some different type of fee schedules. I think still having this 3-to-1 ratio, but also having a higher ratio where it's a lower fee.
Okay.
So we'd not have this on the agenda for
Okay.
Monday.
All right, sounds good. Let's see where we're at. Number 4, we have a resolution approving reservation schedule for Dankwart Park tennis courts.
So the two school athletic directors met, and they, I guess, put in writing what the schedule, tennis meet schedule is. And I guess the request would be to have these times be reserved specifically for them. The courts would not be open to the public during this time. As you can see, majority of these are during April, and it basically takes up 3 to 4 to 5 days a week through meets all of April through this. Most of them are at 4. There are 2 Saturday meets. Those are invitationals, where both Burlington and Notre Dame play at those meets, but they're hosted by Burlington. But this would allow for these courts, since they are just public open courts, to be reserved during this time for their use.
The school's looking to do voluntary rotation on the other days?
They have come to an agreement on a voluntary rotation as well. I believe it started today with Burlington practicing 4 to 5:15, Notre Dame 5:15 to 7, and then every other week they have that change where the opposite school goes first. From March through May, And I think it ends on May 18th, but depending on postseason, if they qualify for state or district tournaments, how long that goes. That's kind of the optimal if everything goes well and they qualify through state. So with that and with the meet schedule, I think it's, I don't know if it's like 15 days where each school has to practice late versus not late. Roughly 15 to 20.
Oh, well, I'm glad that they can work that out. Have we given any thought to a fee schedule for both schools' priority usage of the courts then, or no?
I think that was kind of for the discussion item.
For,
Talk a
okay,
little bit
discussion
more
item
on
for
that.
later. Okay, thanks.
We don't have one at this time. We've
Okay.
contemplated that, but
All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else? Good. Okay. Number 5, I have a resolution authorizing the city of Burlington to hold the Great River Bridge Race.
this is a request or requirement from the Iowa DOT. We've held this race for over 20 years and work with the DOT on an annual basis for closure of that lane of traffic. But this was the first year they asked that we give ourselves permission to actually do this. So this resolution is basically their template of what they want included, stating that the city authorizes the city to hold the bridge race.
Does it exclude you, Jim?
I don't
There
think
is
they asked for
provision.
that.
We might make an amendment to the
exclude
agreement.
Jim?
Yeah.
That way others can
Or a 10-minute
participate.
delayed start or something.
That would be Illinois that doesn't want me over there.
Oh my gosh. Okay, sounds good. Looking forward to it. Number 6, we have some set date for public hearings. We have a consideration of sale of a portion of North 7th Street right-of-way located west of the property locally known as 625 Valley Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions on April 2nd. Do we have anything now for that? No?
No, we don't typically
We don't go-
do a review unless
Right.
you wanted to.
I didn't know if anybody had any questions yet. Okay, next we have a consideration of an ordinance vacating and selling a portion of South 14th Street right-of-way located adjacent to the property at 1408 Harrison Avenue, Burlington, Iowa, for April 2nd. And C is a consideration of plans and specifications for the 2018 Tama Building permeable alley. That is on April 2nd. And then we also have a consideration of transit grant application on April 16th.
And we had started the process of setting the date on this before, and we had a timing issue for making sure we had adequate public notice.
I remembered the process, but I forgot the process. You only do it once a year, but you have to have it noticed for 30 days, which is way different than anything else that we do.
Right.
And so it has to go on the DOT website, and you have to let private people be aware of it. And so that's the confusion in the date that I had set up before. I knew that I had to have it done by a deadline, but I didn't know what that deadline was, so that's the change.
All
You
right,
got a lot on your plate.
sounds good. Next, we have a couple discussion items. Presentation by GRMC Wellmark Grant/Bike Racks.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Dr. Dave Carlson. I'm with the Family Practice Office. And as long as we're poking fun at the mayor, I would say that I need an excused absence for not being in the office. So I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's why I'm just here to see you rather than you to see me. So anyway,
Thank you.
Jake, Tanami Harjo, I got it close, didn't I? And I'm here to talk to you about a project that is underway, and we're not here to ask for your money, so that's a good thing.
We like you already.
As part of a community needs assessment that has been ongoing and I think done every couple of years, the issue of obesity and diabetes was identified in our community, and several of us started meeting to talk about how we might address that. And we affectionately adopted the name Citizens for Active Transportation, or CFAT. We thought it was kind of funny, but the name stuck. So anyway, that the group that has been working on this includes members of Bike Burlington, Jake, who's our community coordinator from the health system, Krista Pogamiller from Des Moines County Public Health, Eric's been part of it, and Zach James from Regional Planning. We started out, we were tasked with how could we get people moving better and increase our fitness level in the community. And biking and walking was the primary goal. And we looked at we started by looking at the bike and pedestrian plan. I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but it's from about 2013. And the thing that we were most impressed with is the majority of the items that were discussed then were quite expensive. And we don't have any money. We didn't have any money. And so we started to look at what could we do that was a relatively low-cost item that might serve as kind of a tipping point for getting people more active. And so you actually have a map there, and Jake will probably talk about that a little bit. But the other thing that the primary thing that we came up with was, what if we could get bike racks in the community that were all the same color? So uniformly colored, neutral, not purple, not dark green, but actually what we call active green, which is, let me see, I've got a picture of it here. And I think, do you have this one?
Yes.
Okay, so the bike racks that we're looking at are actually on the top there. That's the black thing that looks a little like a cross. But the color is the green down below. And so we applied for a grant, and Jake's going to talk about that in just a minute, but and we're successful in getting the grant. But the idea is to put some bike racks around the community, both in public areas as well as offer them to businesses at a low cost. SCC has offered to help with painting through their auto painting program to help paint some of the bike racks. Anybody basically that wants to have their bike rack painted, we're going to paint them all the same color. And so the idea is when people go to the grocery store or they go someplace and they see a bike rack, then they'll hopefully be motivated to say, you know, I might ride my bike next time. This sort of a project is for the bikers like Bike Burlington who bike on a regular basis, but as much as that, it's intended for people like me and maybe some of you who have a bike that we don't really use very much, and we would like to start biking, but we come into all these kind of little obstacles. And I think the complete street concept, putting in bike lanes, you know, this isn't going to happen overnight. But our intent is with the bike racks to help kind of serve as a tipping point and hopefully get people talking about all the places in Burlington and West Burlington that you can bike to. And so with that, I'm going to turn over the specifics to Jake.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Jake Tanami Harjo, and I'm the community coordinator at Great River Medical Center. But I kind of see myself as a community employee at times to try to find ways that we can help complement some issues. And something that we discussed with Eric is that, you know, we'd love to help build bike lanes and build it out, but you could see that the cost of doing so for 1 mile is $1 million. So what can community members do to help with that? So we looked into a potential grant. It's called the Wellmark Foundation Matching Assets to Community Health, or actually as an acronym is MATCH. And so we called our title project as Putting Obesity in Park, Improving Local Bicycle Infrastructure. And the thought here is that we just want to act as that tipping point and also to complement the existing projects that you all have planned. I know actually with the Tiger Grant coming into play that bike racks are a part of the discussion too, but we just see this as an opportunity to kind of spur this process and get it moving. And from our perspective, What you can kind of see is I kind of put together a pretty basic idea of what our project looks like. We're breaking it into 3 phases and really highlighting some really opportunities that we use the data to support this. Our first phase is to install these bike racks in the downtown Burlington area. And if you look on the back side of your page, you can see a proposed map of these locations, and there's about 40 of them that we've decided upon. And so we'll prioritize those first at the city's discretion as well. We understand that there are other projects that need to get finalized first, but we'll hopefully install those sometime this year. And these will be throughout the Burlington area, really centered around Jefferson Street, but that's just a start. We hope to, as our goals have stated, to at least install 100 bicycle racks throughout the Burlington, West Burlington community, and to also install cycle aid stations and a water fountain at North Gorge Trail.
Yeah!
So there you go.
There's
So,
never any drinking fountains that work.
And
I'm
so-
very passionate about this project.
well, thank you. I think that's a great opportunity to just highlight some of the great work that North Gorge has done in improving their area. And so we see this again complementing existing projects. And so, again, for phase 1 is to install these active green bicycle racks, really focusing in the downtown area and potentially community parks. In phase 2, we'll highlight some installation of cycle rescue stations. We've proposed 4 locations, including one at the Port of Burlington, another at the Recplex, one at the Big Hollow Flint River Trail area, and then another in the North Gorge hiking and bike trail area. So again, getting the resources to those who need it and bringing it to it, all under the same color initiative, this active green color. We don't try to play sides here. We just want to try to get people to attract to it, to see it, to know it, and then when they see that active green color, they'll know exactly they can park their bike. We need to do some work on just getting folks active, but this is just a good opportunity to just get folks engaged. This project also includes repainting, which Dr. Carlson brought up, and I think it's really important because we want to connect with these other existing projects. A really good example is the bicycle racks that are outside of the public library, and we've gotten tentative agreement from Rhonda Freevert that we can go ahead and move forward and repaint those existing biking racks to match our initiative, but also just to kind of give them a nice touch-up too. We also have the same agreement in place with SCC, so we're really hopeful about how that can be done to really spread this initiative, not just here in Burlington and not just in West Burlington, but really just start this conversation started for Southeast Iowa. So really our 2 main objectives for this project is to really just to install these bicycle racks, these aid stations, and the water fountain, and to really start this process of awareness and availability of these resources. Something that I want to just highlight too is something that Dr. Carlson brought up is just really act as a catalyst to support the existing projects that we have and to really get folks engaged with their health and getting out into the communities. So thank you for letting us chat about this, and if you have any questions, we'd love to have them or opportunities that we'd like to suggest or move forward with.
Have you had any discussions with the schools too, as far as the colors?
It's funny you bring that up. I have had some discussions with the Burlington School District, and they'd like them to be purple. We are really steadfast in our color choice. I've had very short discussions with West Burlington School District, and they're on board, or I should say one principal is. And so we'll move forward with who wants to work with us. We are going to be really particular about this because we think it's the right thing to do with the connections. This particular color is not unique. It's actually really a color that you'll see very often in other communities to highlight bike racks, bike lanes. And so we just use this as an opportunity to start it here as well.
So I have questions on your little maintenance kiosks thing there. So I can tell there's a pump there. What else does it have?
It will have a variety of tools that you can use to replace your bike. As you can see with those 2 rubber points at the top,
Yeah.
you put your bike there, and you can remove any tires on your bicycle and do some basic repairs if you have the other equipment.
I'm not very good at maintenance, so I'll hire you to do the maintenance, but
Well,
I'll use your system that looks nice.
That's why that's there, is to help engage and educate folks as well.
And I love your verbiage about the tipping point. There's so many people in this community sitting on that fence, so to use another expression. And if we make the healthy route the easy route, they're going to take advantage of it. So
Yeah.
I am super psyched about this project.
Well, thank you. And I just did want to highlight Figure C is the one on the backside. It does highlight just a basic map that Jared Lasser put together from Southeast Iowa Regional Planning. This is not encompassing of all the bike racks that are available, but you can see that in some of our high traffic areas, we are missing some basic infrastructure, especially in the downtown area. So we do see this as an opportunity to not only enhance just getting people active, but just also enhance the beautification of our downtown.
It's interesting you put the schools in green on your map. Well done. I see what you did there.
Very good.
I did wanted to highlight two things I also shared with you. One is a recreation map that the group I'm working with, Des Moines County Living Well, put together. And again, part of this tipping point is to be knowledgeable of the opportunities that we have. So I shared this with you all, but I also have them available at the Welcome Center in a variety of locations to really highlight the wonderful opportunities that we have to offer here in Des Moines County and Burlington. And also to highlight a particular activity that's happening in our community for Southeast Iowa Regional Planning and Des Moines County Living Well is an active transportation for healthier community events. I implore all city planners, city organizations, elected officials, and public works folks to take advantage of this opportunity. We'll be really kind of inviting a lot of different stakeholders from the region to learn about active transportation and those projects and how they help to improve community health and economic development.
All right, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Number 2 is the tennis court improvements funding. Oh, look.
This was put on the work session just as a discussion that had a couple of different council members who just were kind of wondering where do we head from here in regards to tennis courts. And so in order to do that, just throw it out here as a discussion topic to see where it is you want to head. This was a project last year we had as a funded project with city funds in our 5-year plan. And then as we had less funding this year from local option sales tax and hotel motel tax, it became one that the only way it was going to be a part of the funded projects list was with the participation arrangement that we had presented from Burlington School District. Now that we're at a spot beyond that, and how do we move towards the future? From our perspective, it's just not a funded project. It may be one that, as we get into next year's budget cycle, from a staff perspective, Eric's looks at the funding sources he has, and he does reevaluate where things can fit and whether there's a possibility for fitting it in some shape, form, or fashion. And so it's something that could come back next year at the budget cycle from a staffing perspective. But if the council was looking for a different answer, we can look at different alternatives. I mean, the ones that we would suggest, if you're saying that you wanted to see this as being prioritized over something that was on our over another project that's on our CIP, we can go back and take a look at that. Or I guess it's open again to your priority list as to how you want to try to address it.
Yeah, I'll plead guilty. I was one of the ones that asked about it. My concern is that it's unfortunate that agreement couldn't be worked out, but we still have the issue. And looking at the numbers that Eric provided, if we can spend a little bit now to save us a lot later, or to push that project or eventual replacement down the road, I thought it might be worthwhile to have a discussion about it.
Well, I think it really brings up a couple of issues. The first issue is do we prefer, or do we pursue the fee structure associated not only with tennis courts but also the golf course? I mean, any entity where somebody can come in and take priority over that entity for an extended period of time, I think is something that we should look into, but there needs to be fees associated with that. If you're going to deprive the public of the use of that good, then it should be paid for, just as we have with the park, setting the park structures. If I want to reserve the gazebo, or if I want to set aside a shelter house at the park, I've got to pay for those things. So I think that's step one. To me, step two then is reaching out to the schools and making them aware that this isn't funded right now. So if they want to have the ability to use these courts for an extended in the future, then we would look to them to help us come up with the funding in order to maintain them. And I think we need to give them some time to do that. If they come back to us in October, if Notre Dame comes back and says, listen, we haven't taken the steps necessary in order to help with this project, and Burlington at that point is still willing to continue on with the project that they brought forth last week, then at that point, I would say that we move in that direction. If they come and say, listen, we've taken the steps and we've raised X number of dollars to go towards this project, because really they're the ones that I think in the long term are going to rely on those courts more than BHS. I mean, the athletic director said last week they'll probably look to install new courts, not in the near future, but in the future. So eventually, they're gonna have new courts. It'll be Notre Dame will be the one that needs them. And like you said, they're not in our CIP here for the next 5 years. So, at the end of the day, it's gonna benefit them more to come up with a plan to help fund this.
I just want to say I'm disappointed that we're having this conversation. This was all settled between the ADs. We had $50,000, and sadly, it got sidetracked. So you can call it sour grapes if you want, but I've spoken now. We have to move forward.
Have we looked into grants or anything like that?
Yeah, grants was part of our funding proposal through USTA grants. That was part of the city's match for the grant. I think it's up to 10,000 for the courts, so that was factored into the budget that we were hopeful or confident that we were gonna get that. But that still left us $50,000 short from what our city funds were.
Right. Okay. There's all,
Well-
I don't know what the search for grants is like, no, we don't have, it's all on,
Well, we do
you
have,
and-
we do have funds coming from the manor sale, correct? Are those spoken for?
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Okay, good.
So the one project that you tentatively committed to last summer, which we don't really even have, we don't have an answer at this point for whether we need it or whether we have a solution, is on the proposed purchase and development of a couple of buildings in the downtown area. We'd looked at purchasing the railroad slot southwest of the fire department. If we could get that under a satisfactory lease arrangement or purchase or land swap, there'd be the potential to develop parking in that spot to make those two projects work.
What's the amount of that?
So they're at a need for at least 100 slots. I think Jesse's drawing was about 110 in that parking lot, at a cost of about $650,000.
What was the amount of the last amount coming in?
So we have 1.2 million that's supposed to come in in June for the second half payment on the manor site. Out of the other 550,000, if you set aside the 650 to meet that, and I'd say probably maybe a tad bit higher than that based on every other project that Jesse's been designing lately.
Oh, shoot, look at the other city employees enjoy that one. Oh, man.
Jesse, would you like to come say something?
That's all right.
Oh.
Bus tires were loud enough.
Back up that bus.
Sorry. Oh, no, I'm not.
I think Nick needs a break.
Nick needs air.
To clarify, I'm probably part of the reason for his miscalculations on some of it. I'll take some of that.
You said 98%.
The $650,000 for the parking lot in Fifth and Valley included 140 spots with lighting and storm sewer and paving. So I would, to be safe, I would say you probably better plan on $700,000 just to cover engineering. I mean,
And
that
it
does-
was done a year ago, and you're maybe looking at the following year, so maybe a 2-year cycle between, so that you do need to have a little bit of
Plus
flex in that.
purchase price of the property if you're not able to have that land
Yep.
swap go through.
On top of the 700.
On top of the,
Potentially.
yes.
And, some of that is, then you have to talk about a satisfactory lease arrangement on those spots, because you're wanting
Yeah.
to be able to cover the cost on it. And we had told them there'd be, we have a price structure in place for 24-hour spots now. We'd be looking at a premium on top of that. I'm not sure what that amount would be, but we let them know that for us to do something like that, it would involve that type of a premium to make us whole at the end of the day. So that's one piece. I think the biggest significant other thing that needs to be thought through is helping us to transition through a potential loss of backfill, and then help us to transition through whatever our staffing response is as grants run out. Because when we presented some different models for how you could make that happen, several of those relied on that funding to help make that occur. I would like to maintain as much as we can out of that. If we could maintain the whole thing, I'd like to. If we don't have that funding, I don't know how we do that transition if we're trying to be any way responsible towards employees.
I think we just, step one is come up with the fee structure, and then step two is communicate with the schools to let them know what our expectation is over the next few months, and see if they're able to come back in October and come up with something, or even sooner. And if they can't, then I think we'll have to address it at that point. I don't know if I'd be in the favor of taking any of those funds and putting it towards the.
And I think that, Eric, I know you've looked a little bit at what some other communities do for fees, but that's something that we'd want to put a little bit more time into.
No,
trying to come up
and,
with.
I mean, we're not just gonna shoot it off.
Well, yeah, and this would probably be unfair to ask you, Eric, but do we have a fee structure for the teams that use the Flint Hills? The golf teams?
No, that's something we're developing as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think to protect us going forward, we need to have those plans in place, right? And
I'd agree, and that money should, in my mind, be used to help maintain those over a longer period of time, but that's not gonna help us today,
Right.
which is why I think we need to communicate with the schools.
Okay.
I'd rather see us take a majority of that money and put it towards like the additional Recplex project, just because I see us getting a better rate of return on that type of project than we do the parking lots down here, assuming, I mean, we have no idea if they're gonna go through at this point, but we've spoken to provide that to them, so
Yeah,
we should hold up our end
Now,
of the deal.
I guess a couple of things with that. I know Eric's going to be meeting with them this week. They're wanting to close by the end of this month. Now, I imagine that there may still be some concerns on their part on what happens at a state level with the state historic tax credit, and I haven't been following that, Bill.
I haven't seen any updates on it.
So it wasn't in this last week's update, so I don't know exactly where that stands or potential for losing that. And it's one that, I don't know, it'd probably be good, Eric, if you could at least get some questions asked of them as to where they see that fitting within their plans. But they are still moving forward.
Okay. It's too bad we couldn't build a walkway over the railroad tracks, because there's 50-some parking stops or spots that are never used on Fifth Street when you go on the other side, the south side of the tracks. So, but trains happen. Anyway.
Wonderful. Anything else on the, I don't know.
We don't have another pot of funds to
Yeah.
go to.
I brought it up. I'm happy with those answers, but I think we do have some stuff that we need to work on going forward. The fee structure would definitely be number one for both the tennis courts or any facility like that, the golf courts, or the golf course. And, got courts on the mind now. But, I just think we ought to, the reason I wanted to bring it up is I at least wanted to talk about it and see where we're at, so. Matt's got a good idea. Maybe we can work with the school systems and work out something, because this is going to be an issue for a few years for them. Even if BHS decides they're going to build new courts, it's going to be 5-6 years.
It's not gonna get any
Yeah.
better, so eventually
No.
the courts are gonna be unusable for even them.
Right,
and then,
exactly. So,
we'll be in worse shape than we are today.
so maybe we can get them both to partner up and help us, and the three of us will get it done, or the three groups.
I'm confident that if we continue to do what we're doing in this community with a lot of the things available to us from a grants program, grant structures, or going out and able to leverage money, that there's the potential there in the near future to come up with something that can help us on that end. But I mean, we don't know what that is yet, so.
Yeah, I know if there was some sort of tennis group out there,
There is the U.S. Tennis Association is actually probably one of the grants that I think Eric's talking about. And what was the size
No,
of their grant?
I was thinking from like a community group going after those grants, because there are, whether it's going after a big corporation, Nike, I mean, there's, every organization has to give away so much money a year, so it's just a matter of finding the right one that can donate, or not donate, but do the grant. But I don't know if there's any local organization that focuses, you know, like a tennis club,
I
that
don't
kind
know.
of
I know
thing.
someone that's an alum of Notre Dame said they have those track or something that they don't use. They suggested maybe they could build their own courts. But that probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be profitable for.
Yeah, I definitely
they probably
think
wouldn't wanna
that
go
we
that
need
route, but-
work with the schools some more, hopefully, and get that on track. I don't know if that gives you enough direction, or if that was vague enough for you to,
It's big enough.
vague enough.
What do you need, Jim? What do you need from us?
He needs a
Fee structure.
decision.
There you go. Fee structure.
That's what we're working on.
Okay.
And I know that Eric has continued to work with the two
Okay.
ADs, and I
Okay,
assume
good.
will be as time moves on here.
Yes.
I mean, this is always something that can change in a matter of weeks, and we
Yep.
can bring it back up when time's necessary, if necessary. So
Sounds
I'm
good.
fine with where it's at right now.
All right. Everyone satisfied? Great. Okay, we have appointments. Let's see. Did anyone have any issues? We just have the one appointment.
Yeah, there was a
I believe.
reappointment, wasn't
Oh.
there?
Yeah, it's three.
Wasn't there a reappointment?
There's
for that?
several.
Yep, there's a lot of reappointments, actually. Do we need to, you all good with those?
I
Yeah,
didn't
I'm
see
good.
any problem.
Okay. And anything else? No? You good?
I'm good.
Closer down early.
You're good?
Great.
Great. What are you doing?
Look how fast things go
It's
when
like
the
a
mayor's
race
not here.
between the two of them.
Main
What's
Street
the
will
worst?
be closed at the railroad tracks for the next couple days, starting tomorrow around noonish. BNSF will be ripping up the pad there and doing some work. So they're supposed to be done by Thursday at noon, but I would just plan on Tuesday through Thursday, those tracks being unavailable to go across. So, and then Valley Street, as you noticed, the Burlington's got some scaffolding up. They are planning to do some work on the side of their building. They may need to close off half of Valley Street, so you may see some restrictions down there as well. And then Agency Street West, they will be tearing out the driveway at Jimmy John's sometime this week, or at least starting to do some work there. So, and the reason for the stop sign in the middle of that intersection is they had some electrical issues with the new stoplights. So, but
It's one of these
report.
days. All right, thank you.
Radio. Who's gonna do radio?
What day?
Was it Wednesday?
Wednesday, 9
I
a.m.
can do it.
I can do it.
Matt and I.
All right.
Anybody, you want in?
I'm trying to think what I'm doing on Wednesday. You guys go ahead.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I had a really busy
I-
week.
All right.
I would point out, you may have heard, we got a Tiger grant. So, I don't know when we're gonna receive any paperwork on that or really a whole lot of update, but when we do, we'll get it on the agenda. Charlie is gonna be meeting on Wednesday with V&K engineers, or the ones who had submitted the Tiger grant, coordinated getting that in, and
Very good.
it ties off of the work that they've been doing on the flood wall, which is why,
It
I
works
mean,
out
you
so
see how well
yeah.
coordinated it is with that. It was all based off of how do we take additional components that came out of that original work. That's work that's scheduled to be done not necessarily this year. It's more next year and the year after that I think the majority of the Tiger awarded funds, projects that are associated with it will be done. So you have some time yet before that occurs, but we will be getting to make sure that the vision that we submitted, what adjustments need to be done in there are done over the next probably 6 to 12 months before we get anything out.
That's it.
We're excited now.
And congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Yes.
you.
Because-
Congratulations to staff and previous council.
I
That's
was
fantastic.
in on the steering committee for that, and knowing the number of projects down there that are going to be able to be completed as a result of that is, that riverfront's going to be a complete
Amazing.
transformation.
We
from
do
what
have,
it is today,
and we
so.
will have a little bit of flexibility in how some of that funding is spent, but it has to be right in that area. So,
I think some consumers don't understand that. They think that we just have this big pot of money, and can't we help them pay for their sidewalk and their garage siding, and, no, it has to be specified that it, so. I think there is some unclarity with that.
yeah. So, and I don't have anything, both Nick and I will be going up to a conference in Iowa City Wednesday through Friday. So the two of us will be out of the office, both available, at least I'll be available by phone and email. Yeah. So we can be reached, I guess that puts Stephanie in charge.
I was gonna say, who's gonna manage the city?
That's it, though. So,
Okay, I got a couple things. All right, I got a couple things. I just noticed that there's finally going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony at Ashley. And then, of course, Brown Shoes is having their ribbon cutting on March 15th. And then, of course, everyone be safe this weekend. St. Patrick's Day happens to fall on a Saturday, so be safe yourself and watch out for everyone else, because sometimes it's not you have to worry about. And then, of course, there's tons of stuff happening everywhere, all downtown. You got to get online and check it out. Make sure you get around down there and be safe. Thanks. Have a good one. That's it. Done.